So thank you all for coming. First of all, I'm really honored, really grateful, really humbled to be here with you all tonight. So I'll start by telling a little bit about myself, and I actually had to write it down because I didn't know what I was going to say about myself. I'm a faculty member right now at UMass Amherst. I work for the Stockbridge School of Agriculture. My title is Permaculture Academic Program Coordinator. As some of the students just said, there's been a huge amount of energy and just a surge around permaculture. It's something that has gotten a lot of people's attention. It's been in the media quite a bit recently. And I think that stems from because permaculture is really about solutions. It's about finding, the ways to take all the problems that we have in the world and make something good out of them. And so people are really looking for those solutions right now, and I think that's why permaculture has received a great deal of attention. And that's why there's a lot of programs bubbling up at universities, institutions, both UMass, GCC, but dozens of other universities and colleges all across the country right now are all really getting the same surge of momentum. So my history, I've been at UMass for about 8+ years now. I was a student there. I was in the business school, graduated in 2008, and immediately enrolled in a new program, a master's program in green building. That was in 2010, and I was actually the only person to enroll in that program. So, needless to say, I finished top in my class, and now I'm here with you all tonight. So, about 2 years ago, finishing that program, for my thesis, or kind of a mini thesis for this program, I took on a project that entailed converting my front yard, which is located in Amherst, Mass., into an entire front yard permaculture demonstration garden. And so that was my project, and it was writing a how-to guide on how to do it, and it was also doing it. And I'm going to tell you more about that project in a little bit, so I'll save that for later. But really from that project, I ended up getting hired at UMass to oversee a similar project directly on the campus. And that was 2 years ago, and since then, a lot has happened. So I'm going to, again, save that for the presentation and just move into what exactly we're going to talk about today. What is it? So we're going to start out by taking a look at this image. Anyone know what that image is? What would you say that looks like? A flower. Yeah. So this is the permaculture flower. And like all flowers, they start in the center, and they come out, and then they start branching out. So let's take a look right at the center of this flower. And that's the core of what permaculture is. And there's a set of design principles and a set of ethics. And so those ethics, there's 3 of them. The first one is earth care. And earth care is really what it sounds like. It's taking care of the earth. And we have a lot of systems out there that, aren't really doing that. And therefore they're not sustainable because we're, we're depleting our natural resources at a rate that they can't naturally regenerate that fast. And so those systems, they can't continue indefinitely. And so it's not permanent. And that's kind of the perma of permaculture is we want to have things that are permanent that can continue on and on. So earth care is just really taking a look at those ecological systems and looking at ways to make them sustainable. So then we have the second one, which is people care, which again is what it sounds like. It's taking care of each other. It's when someone needs something, you help them out. And if you have excess time and you can volunteer and do something, or you have excess money and you can make a donation like we have here tonight, or you can just go and help someone cross the street, or you hold the door for someone, all those things, they fall within that people care realm. So based on what I just said, who here would say they identify with those in some way? You practice people care or you do earth care? Yeah. Show of hands, probably everybody, right? So this is nothing new. Permaculture is not something that just came out of left field. This is, things that a lot of us do on a regular basis. And so the third ethic is resource share. And what it really means is if we're doing those 2 things, everyone is doing those 2 things, and we're really taking care of the environment, and we're doing that, then there's going to be abundance that's coming out. If we have truly sustainable systems, they're going to be producing a lot for us, whether that's food, whether that's energy. We're going to have an abundance of it. And when we have an abundance of it, we can share it. Same thing with people care. If we're taking care of each other and someone needs help, and then you give them an hour of your time, and then that frees them up because that would have taken them all day to do by themselves. then they can go out and do something to help someone else out. The whole idea of resource share is if we do earth care and people care, the resource share will just come naturally. And so branching out from the core, where the ethics are, and then the design principles, there's a lot of design principles. I could spend a lot of time on those, but I would say kind of a homework assignment. If you're excited by what you hear tonight, just look up permaculture principles. You'll find a website, permacultureprinciples.com. You can kind of go there. But the main gist of what the design principles are is it's rooted in mimicking natural systems and patterns that are found in nature. So all the principles that we use in permaculture design are things that nature is already doing. So we're not really trying to improve upon them. We're just trying to really look upon them, learn, and try to mimic them in some way to design other systems. And now, really looking at that whole flower, what permaculture entails, it's a lot. It's not just about the agriculture piece, but permaculture combines, ready, I'm going to say a list right now. It combines natural building, green architecture, renewable energy, and appropriate technology with indigenous wisdom, land and nature stewardship, alternative waste management, nature-based education, and wilderness awareness. It entails renewable transportation, alternative economics, agroforestry, organic agriculture, community living, social justice, biodynamics, edible forest gardening. All these different things, it really combines them into a coherent whole. And it's that complete system of designing that truly makes sustainable homes, sustainable businesses, sustainable communities. It's when all those pieces are working together and they're interrelating that permaculture is really happening. So one definition I've heard is just a simple one. Permaculture is the art of designing relationships between all things. And when we can take away those disconnected silos and really connect them, that's when you're doing permaculture. And so the other thing that it really looks to do is we're in this time right now where we're in a quickly shifting world. Would people agree with that? That things seem to be happening really fast these days. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a lot of ways, just our regular lives. I feel like my life is just, you wake up one day, you're, 27. I'm not that old. But it seems like things are just, every day, it just goes faster and faster. It's unreal sometimes. And then the same thing with you just look what's happening in the world, and technologies are happening, really fast. But then there's also all these weather patterns that are happening really fast, and just everything in general is really fast these days. And so how do we deal with that? How do we operate in a quickly shifting world? And so, not all of it's bad in quickly shifting world. We have great technologies that are coming out, but there are some things that are happening that aren't so good. And so I want to, show you a few pictures of some of these things. Right here, this is, what modern industrial agriculture looks like in really the heart of America, in the Midwest, which was really experiencing quite a bit of drought, earlier this year. Some of the worst drought we've had in over a century, I heard. So that's really troubling, erosion happening. And, what we have here is just kind of the symbol, I think, that we all, at some point have seen, whether in the media or something, about just what industrial agriculture is looking like and what it's requiring these days, which is a lot of outside components, fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides. It's requiring a lot of those inputs externally, and huge monocultures, which have had benefit. There's a reason why we did monoculture. They produce a lot of food. And so we had this entire green revolution where we thought monoculture was really good. And then there were some unintended consequences that came with it. The resource depletion and having to really, require that fertilizer and pesticides and things from the outside. And now we're kind of caught in that system. And what that's led to is all those synthetic nitrogen and fertilizers, they end up washing downstream. Has anyone seen this picture before? No. It's called the dead zone. And there's many of these all over the world. What a dead zone is it's really taking, when all the rain happens and the chemicals, nitrogen, a lot of it goes into the rivers and eventually goes into the Mississippi and it ends up in the Gulf of Mexico in this watershed. And when that happens, it creates optimal environment for algae blooms. And so you have this whole area in the red, which is all algae. that's growing there, which, algae is not bad. It doesn't sound too bad. But when it creates a blanket over the ocean in a way where it's preventing oxygen from getting in, and it's creating an environment, another monoculture, unintended monoculture of just algae that's happening right in the Gulf of Mexico, where it's really just algae and a few other things that can survive there. But the biodiversity is not where it once was. And so that's happening because, what we did with, putting down all the nitrogen. We didn't try to do these things, but, these things are happening. And so, as well as the climate change and, the environmental, we have some social issues as well. People are starving in the world, and, food is actually not like this that we have here, the convenience. We're really lucky in this country, but there's a lot out there. I could concentrate more on this, but I don't really like to show these images. Who really likes to see these? Nobody does. But we probably do see them, actually a lot. I think of, when I turn on the TV or I read an article, I feel like I'm seeing these images all the time now. The middle one is kind of something that we had recently, a big hurricane. So Hurricane Sandy, which those weather patterns are really happening, more intensely, more frequently these days. We can deny that they're happening, and I think at some point we maybe all have. And I think we're getting to a point collectively where we're kind of getting tired of denying it, because there's a lot of evidence that, this is happening. The number of, hottest days on record, it seems like it goes up every single year. And every, statistic is really backing up that, these things are really happening. But I know I get upset. I get really bummed out, standing up here and talking about these. And so I can either stay in that kind of place of anger. We can stay in that place of anger, being upset. We might go into another place of bargaining with ourselves or being depressed. And these are all things that are normal human emotions. If we feel them, we don't have to just ignore them, but realize that there's a reason why we're feeling that way. We can then move to either acceptance, just say, oh, that's the way it is. And we can continue on living our lives. Or we can say, what are we going to do about it? And I think that's what permaculture really focuses on, is what are we going to do with this? We have these things, there's no denying them. So let's go into actually finding some solutions for these. And so I want to kind of make a shift from here. I want to actually get a little bit lighter, a little bit happier in this presentation, concentrate on solutions now. The vision of permaculture. I think it's really important to start with a vision, so we all know what we're striving for. Those images, we want to stay away from them, but what are we striving for? So here's one vision of resilience and abundance with vibrant local economies, healthy ecosystems, and thriving communities. People support each other to provide food, energy, shelter, and needs in a socially just and an ecologically regenerative way. How does that make you feel? A little bit better than the images I just showed? Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. So I want to actually show some pictures, because words are good, but why don't we get actually some visuals of what does permaculture look like? And so this was the yard I was telling you about back in 2009 when I was a graduate student at UMass, and I decided to make the entire front yard into a edible forest garden, a permaculture garden, the entire front yard, so I called it a yardin. The goal, it was 1/8 of an acre. I think I started too big. I'm going to say that up front. Start small, that's just a tip. And the goal was to make it a low-maintenance garden, that I would spend the same amount of time that I do mowing the lawn at this site, 1 to 2 hours a week on average. So it's a garden that's going to be low maintenance, which is, I don't have much time. I do a lot of things. I want it to be highly productive. I want it to grow a lot of fruits and veggies. And I want to inspire others. I would love to see this garden be a catalyst and start seeing other gardens pop up in the neighborhood and the surrounding communities. That was the goal. So here's some pictures of what it looked like. That was the front yard. Then I invited some friends over. And we started kind of digging up the yard, but not really digging it up, just using pitchforks or digging forks to aerate the soil. So we did a no-till process. Layered down some compost, put some cardboard over it, outlined it with sticks. These are all very cheap things we could do. The wood chips came from the Amherst Recycling Yard, got them absolutely free. The compost came from UMass. They donated it because it was for a research project. And then we put up a sign and we told the neighbors what we're doing. And you can tell this is a college project because, yeah, you can tell. That's what it looked like in the spring. It doesn't look very good, does it, right? This is 2 months later. So I want to go back to the very beginning. This is us, the very first day. We're bringing out snow shovels, because that's all we had. Didn't have much money to buy actually digging shovels. And that was it in 9 months. So showing what's possible. 2 months, 3 months later, we had food coming out of it. So all that was in year one harvest, over 600 or 800 pounds of fruits and vegetables that we got. So what you can do in under 1 year with a vision and one project, it's pretty remarkable. So permaculture, is really, it's about design, but it's about community. It's about designing an ecological culture, one that in all our decisions we're thinking about, what is the earth care piece around that? What is the people care piece around that? Ecological culture design with a focus on community. So all these images have people that are working together. Kind of the point I wanted to get home. It's no fun doing this stuff by yourself. Doing it with other people is a lot better. I want to actually show some other images too. This is a project that has nothing to do with agriculture. And so those things that you see, I actually have one right here. They call these a bottle brick. And so right now I'm actually proud to say one of the things that I can do, being just one person, what can one person do? Well, what I do is I get Gatorade bottles like this, and any trash I have, I stuff it in a Gatorade bottle. So this is my trash at home. It's a Gatorade bottle. And so what we do with that, and I haven't actually done this yet, but I got inspired by seeing someone else's presentation. They take trash, they put it in bottles, and they build things with them. So it's turning waste into a resource. And they call these bottle bricks. And people build benches out of them. So here's a group, this is in Utah, that's building this one. Looks pretty, right? The whole concept is called an earth bench, where you take trash-filled bottles and then you mold around them with a material called cob, which is made of sand, straw, and clay. So it's all natural building materials and turning waste into a resource. Here's some other benches that were made. So just cool things you can do. And it's not gonna, save the world, but it's a solution. It's one of many things that we can do, and it can be really fun doing this. Anyone can do that. You get a stick, you put trash in it, not too hard. But why am I talking about a bench? What does a bench do? Why a bench? It's about design and designing spaces where people can interact and where community can happen. So this picture is a project that's happening out in Portland, Oregon, an organization called City Repair. And what they found out was, there's all these intersections all over the city of Portland and all in towns and cities all across the world. And intersections, traditionally, you intersect with people. And intersect with people, that means you usually had conversations, you would converse. Intersections were places where people gathered and they would talk. And the way intersections now have been designed, because the invention of cars and transportation, our intersections now are places where we just pass by each other. Either walking down the street, there's no reason to hang out at an intersection. It's really loud, there's a lot of cars, it's not usually that pretty. And so they wanted to bring back that intersection where people interrelate with one another, where people can interact. And so the idea was to take an intersection and to paint it something really pretty. They made a design for it and they kind of presented it to the city. The city thought they were nuts, kind of said, you probably shouldn't do this. But eventually they said, well, let's just take one intersection, let's block it off and let's see what happens. And they got approval to do this first project. And they painted it and it looked like that. And so right here is a place where people can just stand up and talk with one another. If it's raining, they can get out of the rain. Right here is that bench that I showed you. So people want to sit and look at this beautiful intersection. Cars actually slow down. Traffic slows down when it goes through it. So it's a lot safer. There's many more less accidents that have been documented at intersections like this. This was so successful that they've installed over 50 of these intersections all over Portland. And it's expanded to over a dozen other cities. They also do a community library, which is not much of a library, but people can bring books and put them outside, and anyone walking by can take a book and put a new book in. And it's just another thing you can do. So here's just another example. I like that picture. It's a ladybug on a sewer, if you don't know. And here's a lot of people dancing in their reclaimed intersection. Right? So this can be fun stuff. It gets people out there interacting with each other. It's about designing community spaces. And so really, that's kind of the point I wanted to get home is permaculture is not about one thing. It's not a bench. It's not about food production. Those are all pieces of it. But it's about design. It's about designing sustainable communities. And part of sustainable communities are people interacting and having fun, and creating spaces where people have ownership. And they, are wanting to be outside and not in their individual houses, but having community gatherings, having a barbecue, having some sort of interaction with your neighbors. I think we kind of lost a little bit of that, and I think it's easier said, or it's pretty easy to do to bring it back. I think we're already naturally designers, so maybe we don't call ourselves designers, but we design our lives every single day. You designed, when you're going to go to work and how you're going to get there. And you designed your day so that you're here in this room right now. Permaculture has been happening mostly outside of academia. I think it's really good to acknowledge most of the designers and the professionals who've been doing it, mostly on farms and on homesteads and in different public spaces. Really, that's where the research has been happening over the past 30, 40, many more years. And just recently has it been emerging into academia. So UMass is, one of many institutions where permaculture has really taken off right now, and it's so good to see it happening here at GCC. And so I'm really thrilled to present to you now a little bit about what we've been doing at UMass over the past couple of years. How many of you have heard of the project at UMass before? Has everyone heard it? So, okay. 3 years ago, kind of how it started was there was a project at UMass, and it was a sustainable agriculture class. And the project was, What's one thing for the students? What's one thing that you can do that will change the world? Whoa, that's okay. So what are we going to do? And their vision was this. They picked a grass lawn outside of the dining commons on campus that could serve as a model. One project that kind of the one, similar to my front yard and similar to so many other projects that happened before my front yard, other ones that inspired me, is have this project be an inspiration that can help catalyze other projects. Same thing. And so we've seen, Greenfield Community College, we've seen so many other schools that have really jump-started an initiative, partly because of what we've done at UMass. We have a successful story. So this was some of the research the students did, was why a grass lawn? Well, taking a look at some of the issues that come with that. There's some problems having to do with grass lawns being such a huge agricultural sector and needing so many inputs from the outside. So some pretty startling statistics in there. 270 billion gallons of water a week, 81 million acres of organic vegetables could be watered with those, etc. So all these things are things that maybe we could start to change a little bit. And I'm not saying get rid of all the grass lawns, but saying we have a lot of them, and could some of them be used a little bit more effectively and efficiently? And we thought, yes, so let's do a 1/4 acre at UMass. We did sheet mulching. We've talked about that a little bit here, but this is kind of a close-up of what it looks like. We had a grass lawn. We put compost on it with cardboard on top and then a mulch layer. And it took us 13 days and over 250 volunteers, but we were able to transform the entire 1/4 acre into the first phase, which was soil preparation of the entire site. All the materials came from UMass. They were all local, and we made a video about it. And how many of you have seen one of our documentary videos? So you can say, I guess, it went viral. It's got over 40,000 views now. It's been seen all over the world, and we've gotten emails from people from Argentina and from Siberia and Africa who've said this video is really inspiring. We want to do a project now at our school or our institution because of this project, which is awesome. That video, I would say, has been one of the biggest successes we've had for fulfilling that goal of inspiring other places. It was really important for us. So after we did the initial sheet mulch, like GCC, we did a design charrette where we invited everyone who wanted to come and participate in the design of this garden together. And we had no idea how many people were going to actually show up. We said 4 hours on a Saturday, and we're not going to pay you anything, but we'll feed you a little something. It was a little incentive, but we had over 100 people show up because that's how many people felt ownership toward this project. So 100 people coming on a Saturday, snowy in March, because they wanted to design a garden. Like, what? Why? Really? They're that interested? Yeah. People really got excited by this project. And it was really cool to see students sitting down with faculty and outside professional designers and people in the local community. We had other school groups who drove from Wesleyan University over an hour and a half away. We had some community residents who heard about it through an online posting, and they drove all the way from Leominster over an hour away to just come and design a garden. So, it's amazing. It was great. It was so inspiring to see how many people cared about this project and really wanted to be connected to it. So we had over 40 designs that came out of it. That was a challenge. We needed to figure out a way to combine all those 40 designs into one coherent, cohesive whole. But when we had those 40 designs, we realized that there were a lot of overlying themes. There were patterns that were emerging. There were things that we're seeing, wow, 10 groups pick this and it should go in that spot. Well, maybe it should. Maybe the landscape, the design, it's telling us something. It's one of the principles of permaculture. You go out there and you do a site analysis and assessment, and if you listen to the landscape, it can kind of help guide the design in a certain direction, where we almost don't even have to do design work. We just have to really take a look and observe the site, and we say, wow, this particular location is the only spot where this particular element, say a greenhouse, should go. So then you site your greenhouse in that spot, you can design around that element. So eventually this design emerged, and we picked as a kind of a theme of the garden was this leaf shape in the middle. And so the leaf was kind of symbolic. We said, we're turning over a new leaf at the university. It's not very original, I know, but we liked that. We liked the symbology of it. And so we started to implement it. So this was us back in May 2011. Starting to planting fruit trees, planting with Big Brothers Big Sisters organization, planting with local elementary schools. We had over a dozen schools show up. So of the many volunteers we've had, probably about 300 to 500 have been local community groups, mostly schools, field trips, elementary, middle, high school, other colleges. And this is during that implementation, that first spring. This was when we did the big sheet mulch, and then we started outlining that big leaf in the center, so you can kind of see where it's going. It still doesn't look that good. But then it turned into that. So pretty big transformation. This is all within 1 year. So showing what you can do with just a lot of people with that common vision. And now we have food growing, and that food goes directly to the dining commons, and the dining commons compost, and the compost goes back into the gardens. So we have a closed loop cycle, and we have student education happening, which is, I think, the main part. People are going out there and they're getting to volunteer and get their hands dirty and have experiential education as part of their higher education. And this is the team that's doing it. And, these are my students, my friends. They make it happen. They're such an incredible group, and they put so much time and energy into it. They're so passionate about this project and what they're doing. And I love my job. I love working with them because they energize me. They're just so fun to work with. And so because of what they did, all these things started happening. Articles upon articles started coming out about the project. This is in the first 6 months. And, since then, these were all local sources. And since then, it's gotten even bigger than that. When Mass Aggie, which was UMass back when it was originally formed, the original class, they farmed. That was part of what they did. So they would work, 4, 8, 10 hours a week on the campus farm. So maybe not, the whole university is not Mass Aggie anymore. Everyone's not going there for an agriculture education, but is there a way to have the agriculture school or the agriculture students be maintaining that as part of their education? That's one thing. There's many, yeah, but it's a great question. So this is just a quick overview. Some of the things that we've had happen over the last 2 years. Just, these numbers are great, and I think they're really important when we're applying for grants and we're showing them to audiences, and they're really impressive, I think. But I think more than the numbers, it's when you go out there and you see, a elementary school group come to the garden and get their hands in the dirt, and some of them maybe live in an apartment complex and have never planted a garden before, and just seeing a smile on their face and that dirt on their hands, and they're playing in it with each other, or asking questions. We planted a fruit tree at an elementary school the other day, and it was a student who went up to the fruit tree and he pointed at a bud on the fruit tree and he said, "That's a bud." And it almost brought his teacher to tears, because he never has said anything like that. He's never shown any sort of interest in that before. And it's those things for me, mean way more than these numbers do or anything like that. It's just, some of those experiences, people finding a friend in the garden that they normally wouldn't have met on campus, and then having a new friend that they have for 4 years and beyond. Just really, really cool things have been happening around it. So of this list, I guess the thing that most people kind of approach me about now is you saw the picture in there of me standing next to President Obama, or sitting next to him. And people always say to me now, because we won this award, the White House Champions of Change Challenge. And after winning this award, people would always come up to me and they say, "Did you get to meet him? Did you get to shake his hand?" I would say, "Yes, I got to meet him, and no, I haven't washed my hand yet, and yes, you can shake it if you want." I have. But one of the things they also ask is, they say, well, what did he say to you? And so that's something that I kind of want to share with you all today is, what did I get in the 3 minutes of me and 12 other people in a room with him, the 10-second question, I could ask him, and what he said. So we were all talking about, what is it that we're doing, and what's he doing in the government right now? And, because we just had a national election, I figured this is a good time to bring this up, and I'm not going to bring it. It doesn't matter what political party you are or anything like that. But basically the message I want to share with you is, he said, "I'm doing what I can in here, and you all doing what you're doing in your communities is so important, because what you're doing and everything that you do and anything that you want to happen, you need to make me do it. You need to put pressure on me to do it. And so just keep doing what you're doing, because I want to do this stuff. I want to make this happen, but it can't come from me. It has to come from you." And it was, wow, okay. And so then recently, the same thing, I read an article. It was Democracy Now! Amy Goodman, she came up with an article, and she brought back a story from when he was originally running back in 2007. President Obama, someone asked him, they said, "What are you going to do about the Middle East?" And so instead of answering that question with a regular answer, he answered it with a story. And he said, I want to bring up a story to you all, and it's a pretty legendary activist, A. Philip Randolph, back in the civil rights movement. He went and he got to meet with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he talked about the condition of black people and the condition of working people in America, and just, those strong things that were happening that he wanted the president to know about. And FDR stood there and he listened intently. And he said, "I agree with everything you say. Now make me do it." And that's, I think, where we are right now. We have a president who's in there, like it or not, whatever political affiliation. He's in there for 4 years, and he's not going to get reelected in 4 years because he can't. So what do we want to happen in these next 4 years? And what movement do we want to create on the ground? Because we have a president in there who can be moved in whatever way. We've seen it happen both ways. And what is it that we want to do? And what sort of things can we create? I think these next 4 years are really important to creating some sort of movement or something. Whatever we want to see in the world, we can do that. But it's up to us. It's not up to anyone. There's no person who's going to get elected in any party who's going to make the change for us. And I think in 2008, we had someone who came in, which a lot of people felt a lot of hope for. We were kind of in this hope state, thinking that whoever, got in there was going to make all the right choices and fix everything. And, 4 years later, we haven't fixed everything. But I think it's on us to do the fixing. And he can help whoever it is up there, but we need to be the ones doing it on the ground. And so that's kind of what I want to share to you and kind of offer to you at the end, going into the end of this presentation. First, I'll say, what are we doing next at UMass? We have a commitment from the chancellor now to do at least one new garden each year. I'm excited to say for the 2013 garden, can you see that down there? His grass lawn. So we're actually doing a permaculture garden at the chancellor's house, which is going to be great. And it's going to create this informal setting where students are actually going to be able to go there at least once a week to garden at the chancellor's house with the chancellor and with his wife. And so that creates a place where people can just informally dialogue, where students can be out there with the chancellor and, it's not a meeting, you're not in a suit, you're in your garden outfit, but people can have a conversation. The chancellor can say, how's it going at UMass? What's your experience like here? Or, what would you like to see being done differently? And students don't have to, get all scared because they're planting a tomato plant or harvesting tomatoes with the chancellor. So it's not one of those high pressure situations. They can just have a conversation. And so I think getting back to what permaculture is, it's about that ecological culture design. It's about creating community spaces where people can just talk to one another. So I think that's going to be a really cool project that, who knows, something gets said to the chancellor, then something might completely change for the better at the university because one student was able to pick a tomato and tell the chancellor something. The other thing we're doing is planting gardens at elementary schools. So we got a grant, and part of that grant is to plant fruit trees and then eventually install a garden this spring at 3 of the Amherst elementary schools. And maybe from there, that project could expand depending on how successful it is. And so those are some of the things that we're doing. But, I want to kind of bring it back and say, well, maybe you all want to do something. And sure, you can come and help us at UMass anytime. We have a website, umasspermaculture.com. We have our volunteer hours on there. But what are the things you want to do? And so maybe some of the things you heard about here, maybe you want to visit some of the sites that Abra mentioned, come to either GCC or UMass. Maybe you want to start putting your trash in Gatorade bottles like I'm doing and save them to make a bench somewhere. Maybe you form a committee and you want to make an earth bench somewhere in your town. Maybe reclaim one of the intersections. Or maybe you want to grow a garden, because we talked a lot about the food systems. And I think permaculture, originally permaculture, which is permanent culture, which we're trying to create, one that can be long-lasting and sustainable. Originally, it was permanent agriculture. And that was kind of the original, why people think of agriculture and food when you hear permaculture. So food and gardens are a really good point of entry because gardens are a place where people can connect and can, change culture. So I want to present this idea. Well, first I want to say if you don't have land to grow a garden, just go to my website /container gardens. And people always say, what can I grow? I don't have any land. Well, there's 66 plants that you can grow in pots or in containers, and you can just go to that website. So I can answer that question now. But the other thing is, I want to maybe create a challenge for us all. And this challenge came from another project that's happening out in Petaluma, California. And it's called the 350 Garden Challenge. And what they did was they set a goal, a campaign. It was a nonprofit called Daily Acts. And they said, let's pick one weekend in the spring, and we're going to challenge our community to say, can we grow 350 gardens, new gardens, in one weekend? They had no idea if that was possible or not. They weren't sure if they would get even 10, but they set that goal, and what happened was pretty amazing. They put a website out there, and they did some community engagement, and what they got was responses from 628 different people. So they not only surpassed that goal, but they far surpassed it. And one weekend, it wasn't one person or one group going around to each site, but it was 628 different people all over the county saying, we're going to do this, we're going to sign on to this campaign, and 628 new gardens went in one weekend. Pretty cool, right? So that was 2010. So let's go to 2011 now. They said, well, we did it last year. Let's double our goal from last year. We said 350 and we got 628. Let's say 700 this year. And it was still called the 350 Garden Challenge, but they had an internal goal. They said, let's do 700 as our goal. And what they got was over 1,000 gardens that year. in one weekend. So then that was 2011, 2012. What do you think they did? They went up again. They said instead of doubling it to 1,400, they said, well, 2012, that's a pretty round number. Let's go with 2012 gardens as our goal for 2012. And they got, what do you think? Do you think they made it? Oh, no. 2,300. So they made it. They got over 2,300 gardens in one weekend. In one weekend. And I'm thinking, why don't we take and build off some of their success? And could we do the 350 Garden Challenge here and really make this part of our Pioneer Valley sort of community engagement that we could all participate in together? I don't know how many people would be interested in that, or how many people are inspired by this project. Might want to participate in the 350 Garden Challenge in some way if we did that. Yeah, well, let's do it. The time to act is now, right? So this is just a couple of questions. Has anything here inspired you tonight? Any of these stories or anything in particular? The other questions I have is anytime we're thinking about doing things where you get really excited like I do, I kind of forget to think about these. You know, what are some of the obstacles that can get in our way of achieving the goals, and you know, what things we need to kind of support us to getting past those obstacles. So I'm not going to ask you all to share those things now, but just think about those. And staying connected. So I'm liking this 350 Garden Challenge so much that, you know, I'm kind of feeling like I'd like to be on some sort of committee with other people. Though I don't feel like spearheading this on my own, but I would love to just kind of throw out this idea that if anyone would like to help in some way, whether hosting a meeting or being involved on a committee or some sort of community organizing, if you have experience, great. If you don't, great, you'll get experience doing this. I just want to end with a couple of quotes. So kind of just to tie it all together, you know, we have this opportunity right now to do things, and I'm excited. And I think maybe some of you are excited too in the audience. And so if it's not happening now, then when are we going to do it? If it's not us, then who's going to do it? And what world do we want to leave for our children? So let's begin designing that world now. I want to just kind of end here. First, I want to say thanks to Abra. It's been awesome presenting with you. Thank you everyone for coming here tonight. Thanks people for organizing.